Nintendo has been creating some of the most iconic video game consoles for decades, and I've managed to collect almost every single one. So I decided to take it upon myself and rank every Nintendo console from absolute worst to mind-blowingly awesome, purely by how they look and feel. Forget graphics, performance, or game libraries, this is all about the style, vibe, and feel of the consoles, their controllers, and even the box art. Some of my picks are gonna piss you off, and if that's the case, be sure to like and subscribe so I can do it again. Starting off in last place is one of the few systems that I don't own, but I have held one before. This crap looks like a toddler's toy, and not a good one at that. My Leapster from when I was a baby looked better than this. I get this is a budget 3DS, hence the name 2DS, but couldn't they have given it a better design? The Game Boy works because it's a rectangle. The DS and 3DS systems work because they can fold. If they had stretched this, spaced the buttons out more, and given it more shape, this design would have slapped. Instead, it's ugly and uncomfortable to hold. Like I said, I have held them before, and I don't get why people say this is one of Nintendo's most comfortable systems to hold. It's not, it's just weird. Next up is the Wii U. Nintendo could not have screwed up more if they tried. The Wii U is the successor to the Nintendo Wii, and comparing the systems side by side, this is just a smoother, more boring Wii. The Wii might have been just a white rectangle, but small details helped the design, such as the blue light around the disc slot and the gray stand. These gave the console a more distinct identity rather than simply being a white rectangle. The Wii U has none of these things. It's a black, round rectangle with a glossy finish that gets fingerprints everywhere. However, that's just half of the equation. The other half comes from the gamepad, the main controller for the system. And it has the same issues the 2DS suffered from. It looks like something for babies. It's not as bad as the 2DS, but it still looks silly with the glossy paint and fat design. The screen on it also sucks and gets dirty super easily. However, I will say it is mad comfortable, with large, well-spaced buttons that feel great to press. The box design is similar to the Wii, but is different enough to be its own thing, with a nice shade of blue used for the box itself and the logo up top that's reminiscent of the GameCube box art. And on the spine of the box, each game has its icon that you see on the home screen. Coming in 22nd is the 3DS XL. Other than the size, this is a total downgrade from the original 3DS. The design is infinitely worse, with plastic that looks and feels cheap, screens that aren't much better, and a two-tone design that doesn't work right in my opinion. I like when DS systems have glossy finishes. Whatever they did for the DS Lite, DSi XL, and new 3DS XL, they don't attract fingerprints nearly as easily as the Wii U. Plus, the insides of these systems aren't glossy, so they stay looking good. I'm also not a fan of the rounded edges. The DSi XL did it right, but these are too round in my opinion. Plus, when you close it, dirt and dust can still get in between the system, and the original 3DS didn't do this. In fact, the only DS up to this point that did it was the original one, so for them to go back on that design choice doesn't make any sense. It is more comfortable because of its larger size, but I'm just not a fan of the design. It looks and feels cheap. Taking the 21st spot is the Nintendo 64. What the f is this thing? Don't get me wrong, video game consoles aren't exactly based on things. Like, what the hell is the PS5 or the SNES? I don't know, but I still think that they look good. The N64 just looks off, especially when comparing it to this device, the Analog 3D. This is a device that plays actual N64 games, not emulation. It makes the console smaller, gets rid of the weird bulges on the side, and cleans things up. If the system had been designed more like this, with added Nintendo logos and flair, I would have liked it a whole lot more. Otherwise, it just looks strange. But the main thing holding this system back is this ass controller. They wanted you to hold this thing differently based on whatever game you were playing, but there are two main issues with that. First of all, it limits the number of available buttons. With a normal controller, I can reach every button, meaning every game can utilize each button, but with an N64 controller, if I were developing a 3D game that required players to hold the controller like this, I would have to limit the buttons I could use, meaning the D-pad and left trigger would be unusable. Worst of all though, my main issue with this controller is that it's just not comfortable to use. No matter how you hold it, it just feels off in the hands, and and when I have longer play sessions using it, it just sucks. Which is a shame since the buttons feel really nice, especially this D-pad, except for the joystick. Since this was the first joystick for consoles, the design was very poorly thought out, and as a result, they are notorious for failing. I also think the box design for the system is awkward. By this point, they had a set-in-stone design, but it still wasn't fully uniform like today's boxes, since the artwork wrapped around the entire box, with just a tint of another color overlaying it. Plus, these were originally cardboard boxes. I had to order these plastic ones custom made. Taking the 20th spot on this list is the new 3DS. This is once again a downgrade from the original 3DS. The only thing I like about it is the shape. It took the shape of the DSi XL, which I think looks amazing. However, it still has a massive gap between the two sides. It's small, which makes it uncomfortable for people with large hands. The stylus is way too skinny to be held comfortably. The finish on it makes it look cheap. The replaceable faceplates are a cool concept, but they don't cover the entire front or back of the system, which makes it look awkward, and the game card slot is in the dumbest place imaginable. The number of times I would be playing this thing or have it in my pocket and the game would crash because something would tap the cartridge slot was beyond frustrating. I have no idea why Nintendo decided to move the game slot down here, but what a terrible decision. Also, I didn't add it in the script, and I completely forgot that the new 3DS had specific games made for it. I just think these boxes look really silly. Nintendo's handhelds have always had boxes where the logo is on the left side. So for them to change it so suddenly with this device that only had a handful of games made for it, I just think looks really dumb. Next up in 19th place is the Nintendo Switch. This is the original Switch that I got back in March of 2017. Well, not technically, because I've sent both the Joy-Con and system into Nintendo to get fixed, and I don't know if they fixed them and replaced the shells, or if they just completely replaced the console and controllers. But we're not getting into a ship of Theseus debate. I love the Nintendo Switch as a system, but the design of this thing and its main controller isn't great. For one, it's too small. It's barely any bigger than a new 3DS XL, with buttons that are spaced out to the same amount as that handheld, and face buttons that are smaller than that handheld. The joysticks are pitiful as they break too often and are too small, and actually I'm interrupting myself just so I don't have to repeat this. Everything about this system is just too small. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about, just assume that I think it's too small because it is. But Chromebite, what about the USB-C port? I don't care, it's too small. Anyways, the Joy-Con don't feel like home system controllers. They feel like something you can connect to a 3DS or something. The rail system connecting them to the tablet is unique and definitely a great selling point, but my god, it's terrible in execution. The Switch isn't exactly the greatest built device out there. It uses cheap plastic and collects grease and other grime extremely easily. Oftentimes when I look at other people's Switches, they are in terrible condition. Even mine was gross back when I was in middle school. The only thing holding the Joy-Con to the system are these tiny plastic pieces that sit against the tablet's metal frame. If you hit this thing in the right spot, the Joy-Con would come loose and you would forever have to deal with Joy-Cons that don't stay on the system. The kickstand in the back is trash, the screen is trash, and the entire tablet feels extremely cheap. The dock is the best thing about the design of this system. It looks clean, it's made of a durable plastic, and it makes the entire package look great. The box design for the system is also great. It's the perfect size for cover art, the logo is in the top left corner and isn't obstructive in any way, the clear box gives room for art inside of the boxes, which makes up for the lack of manuals, and the spines are all red with the same font for each game, which makes a game collection look very clean. Moving on, all of the systems that I talk about moving forward have designs and controllers that I quite enjoy. Unless I state otherwise. Everything up to this point I don't hate, but I also don't love, if you couldn't tell. So, in 18th place is the Nintendo Switch OLED. While I wasn't a fan of the original, the OLED improves the design and feel of the system, ranking it higher than the original. The screen looks better, the back looks and feels better, and the kickstand actually works. However, it still uses the same Joy-Con as the original Switch, which is what's really holding the system back. In 17th place is a system that I really didn't want to rank this low, but I kinda felt I had to. The Nintendo Switch 2. This fixes every single issue that the original Switch had while keeping the improvements from the OLED. The tablet itself is built well. It doesn't feel or look cheap, it has a great kickstand, the screen looks good, the Joy-Con 2 are larger in every sense, and I love the shape of the thing. The Switch was the first of its kind, so it's understandable it didn't look or run well. The Switch 2 came out after multiple PC handhelds had hit the market in 8 years after the original Switch, so it had a lot riding on it. Every mode mode of play this thing offers feels great thanks to the increased size of the Joy-Con 2, and the way that they magnetize onto the system is a much better way to get them connected than rails. My biggest gripes with the system are honestly the colors. It only launched in an all-black color with accents of light blue and salmon. The light blue is fine, but the salmon isn't my favorite. God though, how did Nintendo screw up the boxes for this thing? I'll say it again, the original Switches were damn near perfect. The Switch 2s are the opposite of that. All they had to do, and I mean literally all they had to do, was stretch out this logo to look like this. I don't know why they didn't. There's no way that no one thought of that when designing these boxes. But that's not all. For some fucking reason, they have to put these giant warnings on the front of the box if the game is a keycard, or if it's a Switch 2 edition that also works on the Switch 1. These could have been little blurbs in the bottom right corner that tell you to go to the back of the box, and then all of this info could have been back there. But no, we're left with these things that clutter and ruin what used to be simple, almost perfect boxes. But that's not even the worst of it. Some Switch 2 editions come with DLC that Nintendo just has to advertise on the front of the box, taking up half of the cover art. I think the box for the Switch 2 edition of Mario Wonder has gotta be the worst box art for a game I've ever seen in my life. Almost lost my cool there. In 16th place, we have the Game Boy Advanced SP. What a beautiful system. This is the most radically different Game Boy Nintendo made, adopting a clamshell design that mimics a flip phone, which were popular around this time. I love flip-style devices like this, and this is a great example. It's extremely portable, fitting in almost any pocket you can think of. Not only that, but nothing is exposed when it's shut, meaning everything is properly protected. And this special edition one here is such a beautiful device. Not only does it look like the top of an NES when it's shut, but the inside looks like an NES controller. Non-special editions still look good though. They came in a multitude of colors that really stuck out. However, the system is really small, and because of the clamshell design, they reduced the size of the buttons, especially the bumpers. These are the size of literal Tic Tacs, and weirdly satisfyingly clicky. While small, it's still comfortable to hold for the most part. Long play sessions can get a bit cramped, but that's few and far between. Paired with a solid screen, and I really like this thing. Coming in 15th place is the Wii. I love how this thing looks. Don't get me wrong, it's really simplistic, but this gray slab of plastic does all of the heavy lifting for its design. The Wii on its side is boring. It looks like any other DVD player, with a bit of shape to it and the front cut off. But put on this gray stand and suddenly you have one of Nintendo's most iconic systems. The two-tone design makes it stand out with a beautiful silver color. The system now sits at an angle, which only adds to its unique shape. It has a blue ring that glows around the disc slot, and it has little cutouts in the shape. These might be small and simple, but once everything is added up, they create a unique, distinct design. The boxes for the system follow the same design as most other boxes. Console logo up top, game logos in the middle, and the area cut out in the top of the box for the console logo. However, the Wii's boxes stand out a bit more for two reasons. For one, the spines are mostly white, with the Wii logo alongside the game logo. It's not like most other systems where the two are clearly separated. The second thing is how the Wii logo on the front is situated. For most box designs, it's a simple rectangle with the console logo somewhere in it. For the Wii, they designed their own shape and fitted around the Wii logo. For these reasons, I think these boxes are unique while still following a working formula. However, the main controller for the system did not follow any controller formula. This thing was designed to look like a TV remote with motion controls. It needed to have multiple types of play, much like the N64 controller. However, this controller does it much better. You can easily use it like an NES controller, a single-handed controller, a pointer, or even a baseball bat. You could also buy a nunchuck to attach, adding 2 extra buttons and an analog stick. This controller has a lot going for it, and I'd say it's pretty comfortable. The wire can be a bit annoying, and I wouldn't be caught dead using it like this, but it gets the job done. In 14th place is a literal brick. I have no idea how anyone played on this thing back then. I mean, my god, if this list actually included graphics or performance, this thing would be at the very bottom. So thank God it doesn't, so it actually stood a chance. I love how this thing looks. What a timeless design. Even in 2021, the design is still used for handheld devices. Much like the Wii, this thing has a bunch of small details that add up to really sell the design, such as the one curved edge where the speaker lies, or the back having the rail design, or the gray border around the puke green screen. Even the little lines that lead up to the power switch where it says on off are such a nice small detail. I also love how not only are the buttons angled, but the text that labels them is too. It's not exactly comfortable to hold because it's literally shaped like a brick, but it's not uncomfortable either. And I don't really have anything to say about the box design. It's simple, it gets the job done, and I like the metallic finish they gave to the silver part. And the next Game Boy only got better. The Game Boy Color comes in 13th place. It's smaller, rounder, and still has little quirks that add to the design. But it also does things that set it apart. It still has a two-tone design, but while the black around the screen remains consistent across each model, the base color of the system varies due to this thing having a ton of variations. Despite being smaller, it's actually more comfortable thanks to its rounded back. Lastly, the box design for the system is almost identical to the Game Boy, so I don't really have any new thoughts. And the next Game Boy only got better. The Game Boy Color comes in— wait, I just did that one. The Game Boy Advanced comes in 12th place. As I said, these only got better. Well, except for the SP. But man, this design just screams handheld gaming. I don't know what it is about the shape that they chose, but it is perfect. It's still got all the staples and quirks of a Game Boy, just now in a different form factor. The only downside to this design is that Game Boy and Game Boy Color games stick out of the top when you play them. Other than that, it's great. Oh, and the box art is, again, almost identical to the original. Coming in 11th place is the DS Lite. Originally, I was not a fan of this design. I wouldn't be able to tell you why anymore, because now I think it's one of Nintendo's better devices. The shape, when closed, makes an almost perfectly smooth rectangle, and I love how there's no gap between the two halves of the device. Plus, this two-toned design works extremely well, and the DS logo makes for a great centerpiece, since it's always going to face the right direction when you open it, unlike a laptop. The device screams video game console. It doesn't look cheap, but it also doesn't look luxurious. It's a great middle ground that nails what I want these devices to look like. It also doesn't feel cheap. The plastic is sturdy, and over the 10 plus years I've had this one, it still looks almost brand new. The two paint chips that it does have were actually from the previous owner, believe it or not. Future me here, I actually noticed that there's a crack in the plastic at the hinge. I don't know when this appeared, but I guess it makes sense since my other DS Lite is completely broken here. I bought this one broken since it was only 40 bucks and came with a game, but it seems to be a weak point on these systems, which is unfortunate. Anyways, my only complaint is with the buttons. They are way too small, and the D-pad is just a bit too soft for my taste, making it difficult to tell what direction I'm pressing. Starting off the top 10 Nintendo console designs is the Nintendo DSi. Nintendo took the DS Lite and basically made it better in every way. The hinge is better, the speakers look sleek, the buttons feel better, and I'm a huge fan of this all-white design. I also love the camera cutout for this dinky 0.3 megapixel camera. The two halves of the system close shut all the way, and the shape is very smooth. It's not perfect though, as I would have preferred the finish that the DSi XL has, or even an all glossy finish over the matte one that it has. This thing gives off the biggest 2010s vibes ever, thanks to the single front-facing camera. I think this paired with an iPhone 4 would go pretty hard. Now we're talking. In 9th place is the Nintendo 3DS. My god, this is a fantastic device. It adopts the DS Lite's two-tone design when it's open, and when it's closed, it's got the PS4 Pro thing going on with 3 different layers to it. There is a small gap between the two halves of the device, but it's not major, and the top half also sticks out, giving this thing a unique shape. My favorite thing about the design as a whole is that it wasn't just a DS2, it was almost entirely new, with everything radically changed. Compared to the Switch 2 or the Game Boy Color, not much changed from the original original systems. This, however, got special treatment. It's also got all of these quirks that later 3DS systems would abandon, sadly, like the wireless switch, the SD card slot out in the open, 3D light, and this extendable stylus, which I wish they brought back because it looked cool and actually felt pretty solid. Instead, we got these dinky things. I also really like the glossy finish with the paint they used. This literally looks like the stuff they use on cars, and I'm all about it. I do think the device is a little small, and with the introduction of the circle pad alongside the D-pad, it can get a little uncomfortable at times. But that is what the 3DS XL is for. As for the box design, I think it's just okay. It's slim, simple, and different from the DS to make it stand out. However, I wish it had more of the personality from the console, because as it stands, it just looks like the Wii boxes but square. However, like the Wii U, I like how they put the icons for the games on the spine. Next up in 8th place is a charming little device with the Nintendo Switch Lite. This thing is cute as hell and the best looking Switch system in my opinion, especially with all of the colors and special editions that it has. It's okay comfort-wise, although the buttons are amazing on this thing. The slightly rounder curves on the edges and smaller form factor also help the design. It's just a really cute device and gives off the same vibes that the DS systems gave off back then in my opinion. Thankfully, Nintendo finally upped its game with one of its 3DS revisions, because coming in 7th place is the new Nintendo 3DS XL. This thing is a work of art. It unfortunately carries over the issues that the original new 3DS had, including the gap between the two halves and the shitty placement of the cartridge slot. However, everything else is improved upon. They give it a glossy finish on the outside and a matte finish on the inside, with the outside having this carbon fiber-esque design that makes it look sleek as hell. The placement of everything is perfect to the point that I'd argue this is the most comfortable 3DS out there. The screens look amazing, the stylus is perfect, this is one sexy device. In 6th place is the SNES. This was Nintendo's second home console, and despite being the sequel to the NES, it looks nothing like that thing. It's a top loader, and it's not really based on anything. The NES was based on VCRs, specifically in the US, but this thing is just kind of a doohickey. Wavy plastic at the bottom, an eject button that has no business being that large, weird angles, lines everywhere, power and reset switches instead of buttons. This is a weird ass system, but when all is said and done, I think it looks really nice. Everything flows together well. The controller, however, is more traditional. It uses all of the colors on the console to make an aesthetically pleasing and extremely comfortable controller. And it's still one of my favorite controllers to use. However, this time it just kind of feels like organized chaos. I like the vibes and look of it all, but it also doesn't match the vibe the console was going for. It just seems like a generic 90s vibe. Also, these were cardboard, and this is when the Sega Genesis was using plastic. And now, the top 5 best looking Nintendo systems. At number 5 is the NES. I love how this thing looks, and you can't tell me it's nostalgia because I was negative 20 years old at this point. However, I do like old shit. It's partly why I collect old games and have a 30-year-old car. The NES perfectly encapsulates the aesthetics of old video game systems. It's got a lid that you have to manually open and close, 2 large buttons for power and reset, 2 controller ports, a big-ass red light in the front, multiple colors, a nice shape, and the whole thing is unnecessarily large. Seriously, the NES top loader is like 1/3 of the size. Everything here looks and feels right. The tapered bottom half, the black bar across the front, and Nintendo Entertainment System in big, bold letters. I love comparing this thing to the Xbox Series X. Both are generic shapes, but the NES does something with it, making it instantly iconic and recognizable. The Xbox Series X does nothing. It is as minimalistic as you can get. The NES controller is also just as iconic, but it's not something I'd be thrilled to use today. It's a weird shape for a controller with not a ton of buttons and is just okay comfort-wise. However, it does maintain the console's aesthetic and looks great. As for the box designs, the NES didn't really have anything set in stone. At first, they used the black box design, which was alright, but then they stopped using it and didn't really have a set box design after that. Coming in 4th place is the new 2DS XL. Dumbass names aside, this system has a sleek, modern design that was so close to being perfect. If they had just taken the glossy finish and carbon fiber design that the new 3DS XL had and applied it to this instead of the matte plastic stripe design that they gave it, I easily would have put this at number 1. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, so it looks a bit cheap in my opinion. Still, the design of this thing is top notch. The silver ring around the border, the curved edges all the way around, and the way that the top half is fully flush with the bottom half when shut. This thing came out in 2017 after the Switch, and while that was a terrible time to release it, I did pick one up heavily discounted at Target, and have used it as my main 3DS ever since. It's in a weird middle ground between the size of the new 3DS and the new 3DS XL, but I still find it very comfortable. I'm still debating whether or not I prefer the new 3DS XL or this thing. I will say though, it has a lot of weird quirks. To achieve this design, they had to move a lot of stuff around and make other changes. The cameras that normally sit on the top half of the system are now on the bottom half, the speakers are now at the very bottom of the system, the stylus is way too short and not comfortable to use, and the game card slot now has a big ass cover to accompany it, along with the SD card slot. This device is sleek, weird, and shouldn't have ever come out, but I'm glad it did because it is by far my favorite 3DS model to date. However, in third place comes a DS model that I think is better, the DSi XL. Really though, I'm chalking this one up to bias. This is the DS model I grew up with until my parents took it from me in November, said it was broken and needed repairs, and then traded it for a 3DS and gave that to me for Christmas. True story. There isn't much here that I haven't discussed before. It's a great size, it's glossy on one side and matte on the other, it has a two-tone design, and it feels great to use. I should be putting it lower, but I really like it. In second place is a pick that I'm sure is gonna piss everyone off, and that's the regular ass DS. Motherfucker, I love this thing. Nintendo took the design of the Game Boy Advance SP, extended it, and gave it the worst build quality ever. These things are notorious for breaking. Even mine has a few cracks, but I don't care. It might look like a fat f***ing chud, but damn is it charming and comfortable. This is unironically one of the best D-pads I've ever used. The buttons feel amazing, it's got a big ass power start and select buttons, and the shape of it is just weird. Like, why can I still press buttons when it's shut? Why does the bottom stick out so much from the top half? I don't know. Nintendo's designers were on some type of mystery drug when designing this thing, and I love it. I didn't even grow up with it. I got this thing back in my senior year of high school. I don't know why I took such a liking to it, but I did, and here we are. The box design for the system is one of the best, integrating the system's design into it. The spines also look very clean, and are as easy to read as other home system designs. Overall, while this might be my most controversial take on this list, I still love it. And lastly, at the number one spot, and with process of elimination, the Wii Mini. No, I'm just kidding. There are a couple of systems I didn't talk about. The NES Top Loader, the SNES Mini, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Micro, Wii Mini, and the Virtual Boy. That's because not only do I not own these, but I've never even held or seen one before. I've seen and held the 2DS, but I've only seen these and other systems and photos, so I don't think it would be fair to rank them alongside systems I've had since I was 10. Well, I could talk a bit about the Virtual Boy since I bought this while making this video. This shell is designed to replicate the exact look and feel of an original Virtual Boy. You put your Switch or Switch 2 in it, and boom, you have a Virtual Boy. I actually really like the look of this thing. As you can probably tell from this video, I am a sucker for two-tone designs. I think this looks better than most modern VR headsets, with multiple shapes and angles implemented into the design rather than an oval shape with cameras. Doesn't mean it's comfortable though. This is how Nintendo designed it to be played since it doesn't have head straps. The controller also looks weird as hell, but I've never held one since the Switch Classics one is literally just the headset and no controller. I'm not ranking it, but it looks really good, it's just extremely uncomfortable. Anyways, the true number one spot goes to the GameCube. I love everything about this system. It's compact, it's got controller ports at the front, adding the Game Boy player makes it a literal cube shape. I love the colors and how both the front and top look. This thing is the video game system. The controller is also iconic and fantastic, only missing a few buttons that modern controllers have. Not only is it comfortable, but the buttons are laid out in a special way that makes sense. Since A is the button you use most of the time, it's the biggest one, with the rest being centered around it. I like it, and it really works for most games. Like everything else, it's not perfect though. Playing older games that use Y to run and B to jump literally just don't work here because of the button layout. And the D-pad is also pitiful. It's smaller than those on portable systems. The box design is solid for the most part. It falls in line with most modern box designs, but the system logo is at the bottom of the spine rather than the top, which I really don't like. I know the design for this thing is simplistic, but I still think it is the best Nintendo console design-wise of all time. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Nintendo system is design-wise, and don't forget to like and subscribe.